Emergency events can occur for all sorts of reasons: fires, earthquakes, floods, robberies, accidents, and so on. But the outcomes of all these events are really the same. Emergency events can cause harm to people and severely disrupt your business. If you have a plan before an emergency, it's likely that less harm will be done and you'll be able to get back to normal business much quicker than if you're making a plan as you go. Quite apart from any moral and legal obligations, it makes good business sense to plan for emergencies. Whilst every emergency will be unique, there are some basic steps to follow which will help to minimize the impacts on your business. When an emergency event happens, stop what you're doing, then think. You need to address the immediate situation and the impacts to people and property. Once you've assessed the immediate impacts, then you can take actions to help minimize harm. So really, that stop, think, act model is a basic emergency plan, which is useful for all emergencies. But creating more detailed emergency plans for specific foreseeable emergency events will give you huge advantages when that emergency happens. Planning ahead gives you the opportunity to acquire emergency items that may be needed. Things like fire extinguishers, first aid kits, danger tape, emergency communications equipment, emergency shelters, and things like that. Planning ahead also makes sure that people have the right training, first aid, or even how to use a fire extinguisher. Most importantly though, if you've made a plan, you can then practice that plan so that you're confident that it's going to work when you need it to. But before you go spending lots of your valuable time and money on creating emergency plans, it's worth considering what types of emergencies are likely to affect your business. It comes down to risk. If you're in an area that's at high risk of earthquake, then make an earthquake plan. If you operate a business late at night in an area of town with bars and nightclubs, then you might decide to make a plan for dealing with violent or aggressive people, or even for robbery. If you spend much time traveling on the road, make a plan for a vehicle crash. As a minimum, every business should have a plan for dealing with a building fire and medical emergencies. Making a plan for a building fire will require that you establish an evacuation plan, which highlights the normal exits and any emergency exits to the building, the route to these exits, and the locations of firefighting and emergency equipment, as well as first aid kits. You'll also need to establish a safe assembly area and have a method for ensuring that everyone is safe and accounted for. This evacuation plan is also useful for any other emergency that requires people to leave the building, but it's only going to be useful if it's been practiced and people are familiar with it. Once you've decided which emergency events are likely to affect your business, creating plans for these is a straightforward process. Start by working out how people and property are going to be affected. Then you can think about what kind of resources you'll need and what actions to take to respond to these incidents. We all know that prevention is better than cure, so is there a way to prevent an emergency or take actions before it happens? For example, with cyclones and hurricanes, there is usually some kind of warning available from weather forecasts. So can you build warnings into your plan and take preventive actions? That might mean signing up to text alerts from your local weather forecaster and then taking down any temporary structures and closing windows so that the storm blows over and doesn't cause an emergency for you. With a fire, there's usually no warning beforehand, but good smoke alarms should alert you to a fire before it gets out of hand and give everyone in the building sufficient time to evacuate. In the template health and safety management system, there are a few example emergency plans which should give you an idea of what a good emergency plan looks like. But please, do a risk assessment to establish what emergency plans you need to think about and work out who and what is vulnerable, and then establish your own specific plans. After that, do a practice and find out ways to improve your emergency plans. Just as with the other health and safety plans we've been speaking about, emergency plans should be treated with that plan, do, check, act cycle so that they are continually improving over time.